Hey guys, I hope you all are doing quite well in your respective lives. Today, I, Kunal Nagpal, representing an academic firm, Nagpal Economic Academia, am feeling really great to welcome you all once again to this great portal. Dear friends, in today's session, we are actually going to have a very crisp and interesting discussion on a very hot topic existing in today's international financial market. Most of us must be aware of the fact that since ages, the two predominant currencies, US dollar and euro, are being used by major countries worldwide in order to engage in international financial transactions with each other. However, from the recent past, especially after the commencement of the Russia-Ukraine war, resulting in a lot of turmoil politically, economically, causing a lot of fluctuations in core parameters governing the overall balance or the overall equilibrium in the world economy. This particular trend is actually undergoing a massive change. So, in such a scenario, many countries have been preferring to opt for other options instead of US dollar and euro. That is, many countries are preferring to engage in inter-country trade relationships using their own respective domestic currencies. So, my dear friends, in today's discussion, we are actually going to focus on a very, very important economic association, that is BRICS, which is actually an amalgamation of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, who are actually in talks with each other. The member countries are actually in talks with each other to come with a common currency to be used in the international trade relationships among them. So, in this regard, we are actually going to go through the major insights. So, in the view of dumping the dollar, will the new BRICS currency replace the US currency, that is US dollar, for trade? This is a big question mark. And this is actually the hot topic which is going on among the BRICS members. My dear friends, the US dollar has actually been the official currency for the international trade for years now. However, in recent times, there has been a talk of creating a new currency altogether in an attempt to dump the dollar and push back against the American hegemony. And also, I would like to bring forward, my dear friends, the US economy is actually one of the worst affected economies in this entire political and economic turmoil, because of which the US Fed has been increasing its interest rates. And the recent SVB crisis, that is the Silicon Valley Bank crisis, is the resultant of that continuous rate hiking. So, in such a scenario, accompanied with increasing enmity between USA and China, along with that, between USA and Russia, post the imposition of the Western sanctions on Russia. These all factors have contributed immensely towards thinking altogether of dumping the US dollar and coming out with a new currency altogether. So, in such a scenario of de-dollarization, we are actually receiving a major boost in recent times, especially after the Russia-Ukraine war, which began last February. And last week, this movement received further impetus when Mr. Alexander Babikov, the deputy chairman of the State Duma, was quoted as saying that the BRICS nations are actually in the process of creating a new medium for payments established on a strategy that does not defend the dollar or euro. Along with that, my dear friends, as I had said, that USA is actually one of the worst affected economies in this entire global crisis. So in such a scenario, in order to protect themselves, or in order to shield themselves from the major turbulences happening in the US economy, the countries are actually thinking to switch from the US currency to some other alternative for creating and enhancing the international trade relationships among each other. So let's ponder on the following questions. Is the BRICS nations actually creating a new currency for the trade? Who is at the forefront of this particular movement which is going on? And will it actually benefit India if it comes into picture? Will the plan actually fructify? There are several questions to this issue, and we try to answer them all in the following discussion. So my dear friends, in this entire process of dethroning the king of currency, the king of currency is US dollar. It has been the US dollar up till now. So now in this entire process of dethroning the king of currency, US dollar, it has actually become the official reserve currency of the world in 1944. This is the basic insight I am putting in front of you, that it became the official reserve currency of the world in 1944, and the decision was made by a delegation from 44 allied countries called the Bretton Woods Conference. Since then, the dollar has been enjoying a powerful status in the entire world. It has given the USA a disproportionate amount of influence over other economies. In fact, the United States of America has for long used imposition of sanctions as a tool to achieve the foreign policy goals. However, my dear friends, not everybody likes playing by the USA rules, and countries like Russia and China would like to call a halt to dollar hegemony, as I have pointed out earlier, because of the rising enmity between USA and Russia and between USA and China. So this entire process called De-Dollarization, which has been referred to reducing the dollar's dominance in the global markets. So it's actually a process of substituting the US dollar as the currency used for trading oil and or other commodities. Here we are specifically targeting the trade of oil because it's the major commodity being used in the international trade. And simultaneously, it is actually the worst affected commodity post-Russia-Ukraine war, as all of us are quite aware of. The proponents of de-dollarizations say that this particular process would basically reduce other countries' dependence on the United States of America's currency, that is, dollar, and the US economy altogether, which could actually help mitigate the overall impact of economic and political changes in the USA on their own economies. Moreover, the countries can basically reduce their exposure to the currency fluctuations and interest rate changes, which can help to improve the economic stability and reduce the risk of financial crisis. That's what I pointed out at the beginning of in the beginning of the discussion. That is, in order to shield themselves from the economic turmoil happening in the US economy, that's the major reason which is actually compelling various countries worldwide to switch away from the US dollar to be used as the main medium for engaging in the international trade relationships or international business transactions with each other. So, my dear friends, this particular move has been gaining speed in the last few years, especially the previous year. And the reason is but obvious, the Russia-Ukraine war. So in 2022, the International Monetary Fund noted that the central banks today are not holding the greenback as reserves at the same quantities as yesteryears. The dollar's share of global forex reserves fell below 59% in the final quarter of last year, extending a two-decade decline according to the IMF's currency composition of official forex reserves data. The paper stated, strikingly, the decline in the dollar's share has not been accompanied by an increase in the shares of the pound sterling, yen, and euro, and over other long-standing reserve currencies as well. Rather, the shift out of dollars has been in two directions. A quarter into the Chinese renminbi and the 3/4 into the currencies of smaller countries that have played a more limited role as the reserve currencies. So, my dear friends, in order to punish Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, the Western governments froze $300 billion of Russia's foreign currency reserves last year. I repeat, in order to punish Russia for its invasion of Ukraine, the Western governments froze $300 billion of Russia's foreign currency reserves last year, roughly half the total, and expelled Russian banks from the SWIFT international payments system. As Jason Hollins, managing director of investment platform Best Invest, explains, the so-called dollar weaponization has actually rattled many countries and not just Russia. The countries willing to continue to trade with Russia, like India and China, have started doing so in rupees and yuan instead, triggering the talk of de-dollarization of the international trading order. He added that Brazil and China, which are the significant components of the BRICS association, are now trading with each other in yuan, helping to establish the Chinese renminbi as an international currency and dollar exchanger. India too has been trying to move away from the dollar. Recently, 18 countries including the United Kingdom, Germany, Russia, and even the United Arab Emirates, that is UAE, have been given the permission to trade in Indian rupees. In February, noted economist Mr. Nouriel Roubini had said that the Indian rupee over time could actually become one of the global reserve currencies in the world. In an interview to the ET Now, the economist nicknamed Dr. Doom had said one can see how the rupiah could become for some of the trade that India does with the rest of the world, especially the South-South trade, could become a vehicle currency. The Indian rupee could be a unit of account. It could be a means of payment. It could become a store of value. Certainly, rupiah over time could basically become one of the variety of global reserve currencies in the world. And my dear friends, let's talk specifically about the movement which is going on in the BRICS Association in order to come forward with a common currency called BRICS currency, which would be used for the international trade among the members of the BRICS, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Let's see whether this plan will actually fructify or not. Because all of us are quite aware of the fact that there is a lot of enmity or uncomfortable relationship between India and China. So my dear friends, taking this forward, the BRICS collective, made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are also mulling creating a new currency in order to facilitate trade altogether. And it is reported that the new financial agreement could be actually seen as soon as in August, when the countries meet for their annual summit in South Africa. The sources have disclosed that Russia is actually behind the idea, as it has faced economic sanctions from the West over the invasion of Ukraine. Mr. Alexander Babakov highlighted a very important fact that Russia and India would both benefit from the creation of a common currency that could be used for the payments, calling it the most viable route to take at this point of time. New Delhi, Moscow should actually initiate a new economic association with a new shared currency, which could be a digital ruble or the Indian rupee. Mr. Babakov was quoted as saying. He went on to note that China would also play a very crucial role in the development of common currency, as it would add an additional 1.4 billion participants to the system. My dear friends, New Delhi, Beijing, and Moscow are the nations that now institute a multipolar world that is being endorsed by the majority of governments worldwide, he said. So its composition should be based on inducting the new monetary ties established on a strategy that does not defend the US dollar or euro, but rather forms a new currency component of benefiting our shared objectives. And interestingly, Brazil already has begun to accept the trade settlements and investments in yuan. India and Russia have the rupee ruble mechanism for trade, in which they settle the dues in rupees instead of dollars or euros. So this actually shows that the BRICS nations are basically intending to change the dollar-dominated system, which would eventually lead to de-dollarization across the globe. Now, my dear friends, let's discuss the implications of a BRICS currency if it comes into picture. If the BRICS nations do go ahead with their plan and come up with a new currency, it could actually help stabilize their economies. Yes, you have heard me right. It could actually help stabilize the economies in a holistic manner. For an investor in the BRICS countries, it would mean increased consumer confidence. And as a result, this would basically lead to an uptick in spending and economic growth altogether. But will India accept this new currency? Will it want to be economically aligned with China, with whom it is having a standoff at the border? Moreover, some experts say that this new deal might benefit Beijing more than New Delhi. What happens next is actually unknown, but the fact that the dollar is losing power is certain. We need to keep this thing in mind, that the dollar is losing its power, and it's very, very important to be kept in mind. Keeping in view, USA has been a very, very significant economy if we consider the entire global scenario till 2 years back. But it is actually losing its control gradually. And various other countries are emerging now to be the superpowers. But simultaneously, I would also like to say we should not discourage the spirit of the global family in this regard. We should try to uplift the overall concept of cooperation and try to discourage the spirit of the competition. But the major point of our today's discussion has been the substitution of the US dollar, which is actually quite a rational approach being adopted by major countries worldwide in order to protect themselves from a lot of economic turbulences, in order to gain more stable economic held in their respective countries. This is actually a very, very important step. And the next question is whether BRICS would be able to come with a common currency to be used among its all member countries. In that particular scenario, the major hurdle is the uncomfortable relationship being shared between India and China as of now. So let's see what results would actually get fructified, and we would come to know about it in the month of August when the summit would be held in South Africa among the BRICS nations in this particular regard. So, my dear friends, I would like to conclude my session here itself, and I hope you have been benefited immensely with this great, insightful session. Thank you so much. Namaskar. Jai Hind.